Hi, Purple Ella here and welcome back to my channel. And it's time for this month's Autism in Company, so I'm going to be chatting with lovely Roz.
Hello.
And the topic we're going to discuss this month is diagnosing women.
Big one.
So yeah, this is quite a big topic, and I would like to say before we start this discussion that when we talk about female presentation autism, we're not talking about something that necessarily is only the presentation of women. Sometimes men can present like women, and sometimes women can present like men. So really what we're talking about is a different presentation type that is more commonly seen in girls and women. So now that I've cleared that up and you're not going to all lynch me, I think that we probably start with why is it hard to diagnose?
Yeah.
Why is it harder to diagnose women?
Yeah, and I think one of the initial things is how commonly women mask, especially in childhood as well. It's like if you've got a boy playing alone on the playground, it's like what's happening because boys play as a homogenous group, whereas girls play as individuals. So if like it's girls alone, it's like, oh, what is it? Why is that girl alone? Is it that she's being bullied? Is it? And they're looking for other reasons. They're not looking for autism.
Because girls should want to be sociable and should want to be with groups of other girls.
Yeah, so it's probably something she's socially doing wrong. So you're like, oh, let's teach her how to socialise.
So it's like that classic thing of the eccentric man being so much more acceptable than the eccentric woman, which is something that I guess you can probably relate to. I've sort of struggled with, or I've always thought it might be easier if I were a boy.
Yeah.
It just makes me want to sing that Beyonce song, If I Were a Boy. Anyway, sorry. And I guess that also kind of goes into, you can look at other qualities in that way, in that we expect girls, society expects girls to be kind and gentle and empathetic and caring and lots of qualities that maybe if they weren't seen in a boy would be less unusual and considered kind of more acceptable, which obviously is wrong in and of itself, but that has an impact, doesn't it?
Yeah. And that girls often imitate, so you see social situations, and you see them a lot more in girls because girls socialise in such more logical ways, like ways that you can like look at and understand, whereas boys, they just kind of socialise, they just go and do things. Whereas girls have groups and they have hierarchies, and so it's like you learn the hierarchy, you learn what to do, rather than actually knowing what to do. And I think girls on the spectrum often feel like they're imitating people and will just choose a friend and imitate them. Like I used to eat the same thing that my friend ate because I had no idea how to order something. So I'd wait for her to say what she wanted to eat and then be like, yeah, that's what I want to eat.
I still do that. My Mr. Purple is always like, you're going to ask me what I'm ordering, aren't you? And he's like, I'm not telling you until you've chosen.
I love checking around the whole table and then being like, okay, yeah, now I know. Now I can make my decision.
And I think that kind of is really reflected when you look at my two autistic children, in that Super Kid is, I think definitely, is it wrong for me to say he's quite eccentric? He's quite an eccentric child, and obviously so as soon as you meet him, and that is completely accepted by his friends, and he has like quite a big social group at school, and it's never been a problem for him, and it's never occurred to him that he should be any different, really. Whereas Wonder Girl has definitely got some very strong female role models that she is using to navigate particularly school social life, to the point where they've kind of recently realised in school that she has just been directly copying her maths from the girl that sits next to her at school. So she hasn't really learned any maths in the last year or so, which is obviously being corrected now, but so she's doing that all the time. She's found some strong girls who are happy to kind of mother her, whereas Louis just out there being his own, doing his own thing. And yeah, I think that's definitely what I see in my children. They're equally eccentric, but you only really see Wonder Girl's eccentricities when she's at home.
Yeah.
And in terms of masking, I don't know about you, but one thing that I did was I had like a real Annie phase. So I used to watch the movie Annie, and I used to think, I don't know, there was something about Annie that I thought, she had a dog, and you know, she could sing and she could dance, and I thought she was awesome. So I used to sort of sit on my window ledge at home and sing "The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow" like on a daily basis.
Excellent.
And pretend to be an orphan, which probably wasn't that great for my mom, but you know. Anyway, sorry. Did you ever do any, like, can you remember any characters that you definitely deliberately imitated when you were younger?
None that I can think. I was often just reading.
So no sort of Anne of Green Gables or what
I mean,
Katie
I did love Anne of Green Gables.
Did you ever read what Katie did? I used to think Katie was pretty cool.
I used to wish I was like Anne of Green Gables because she was able to feel so many things.
Yeah.
And I kind of didn't realise it. I was just like, oh, Anne of Green Gables. And my mum wanted to be Anne of Green Gables when she was younger.
Was she a writer? Or like
yes.
She was into English in some way, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was a writer. She wrote very flowery language.
Yeah, and I wanted to be a writer, so that really tapped into that as well. Yeah, and what was I saying? I was talking about, I'd got a point to make and I forgot.
Talk about imitating characters.
Yeah, even now, actually, one of the strategies that I have deliberately chosen to use in order to navigate social life is that I have a friend, and her name is Katie, and she is neurotypical, but as well as being neurotypical, she's very level-headed and balanced in her approach to life, and I respect that. And so for a while, when I was first diagnosed and trying to figure out how to cope with the world, I had a strategy that I called "What Would Katie Do?" And Katie was up for this, and we communicate via text messages, so it's kind of comfortable for me. And I would encounter situations in life, and I would message her, "This has happened, how do I handle it?" And it's got to the point now where I can actually do "What would Katie do?" without Katie actually needing to be involved.
Yeah.
But I think picking a female role model isn't necessarily always a bad thing.
No, like I've done the same with my friend. Well, I've done it with multiple friends, but specifically the big one is my friend Holly, who I met at university. Is very dyspraxic and disorganised, so often gets herself in situations which are ridiculous, and I don't understand how she gets into them. It's like she's missed the train. She got on a train too early, ended up at a stop in the middle of nowhere, has no money, has no cash card or phone, and just has to figure out how to get out of it. And like, I just don't understand how she does this. But what I kind of do is I look at it and go, what would Holly do to get out of this situation? And obviously I don't get into situations that are as bad as the ones she gets into, like stranded in a different country with no money, like trying to figure out how to get home. But it's just like, if she can do
handle it, you can too.
I can too.
Yeah. So, do you think we should move on?
Yep.
Okay, so the other area that makes diagnosing girls and women and girls, which way around? Women and girls, is the fact that although we do also still have intense special interests in the same way that boys on the autistic spectrum do, our interests tend to be a little bit more typical. So, to give you an example, Superkid's previous special interest was botany, and his current special interest is origami. On the other hand, Wonder Girl's special interests are the YouTube star JoJo of JoJo Bo fame, which is a very common interest amongst little girls, and My Little Pony, also a very common interest. So you can see where what she is doing could look more typical.
Yeah, and often I think I've read stuff on when you're diagnosing, especially younger girls with autism, it's about looking at how their interest presents itself. So instead of being like, oh yeah, she's interested in ponies just like other little girls, it's like, yeah, but is her interest in ponies different from other little girls' interest in ponies?
So it's like the intensity of the interest.
Yeah, and like I've definitely seen stuff of being like where someone's been completely interested in horses specifically, read all the horse books, but actually doesn't want to go on a horse. No interest in going on a horse like a normal young girl would be. Just interested in learning everything about horses.
So that's that sort of cataloguing of information.
Yeah. Rather than
wanting to have that experience. Yeah.
I want to experience.
Because when I went for my diagnosis, they sort of said, "Oh, did you have any intense interest when you were a child?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I really, really love dancing, and I did dance classes." And he was like, "Well, yeah, but that's quite typical." And I was like, No, you don't understand. I really love dancing. I went to a dance class like 7 days a week, and when I wasn't dancing, I was polishing my ballet shoes, or I was, and so it was like all consuming. And right now, I have, as I've mentioned before, a new puppy, and I am really struggling to talk to anyone about anything that isn't dog related. It's like it's all I can think about.
Right now, all you want to do is talk about your puppy.
Yeah, I'd quite like to just let's ditch this topic and talk about puppies. So yeah, that intensity of interest. Another area that is common for older girls and adults on the autistic spectrum is misdiagnosis or autism presenting as something different, like anorexia. which you were going to talk about a little bit.
Yeah, there's a researcher, Nancy Zucker, and she looks into the fact that autism often presents as anorexia or other eating disorders. And I've heard this quite a bit, and I think someone I know went into a centre for people with anorexia and eating disorders and looked around at all the women and was like, these women are all presenting with autistic symptoms? I was going to call it
Traits.
Traits, that's the one. I was like, it's not symptoms.
Did you see the Louis Theroux documentary on eating disorders?
No, I think you mentioned it.
You should check it out. It's on the possibly still on the iPlayer, but I definitely watched that. And I'm not saying that anyone on that programme is definitely autistic, but I definitely watched that and felt like these women are like me.
Yeah, and so often it's also things like borderline personality disorder and
bipolar
and
anxiety, generalised anxiety, OCD.
Yeah, and it's because there are all.
I've had 2 of those diagnoses.
And it's like there are all these things that are more common in women, and you're like, well, is it that they're more common in women, or is it that women aren't being recognised as different, as autistic, and they aren't being like supported in that way? And it's more common for a woman to have already been in mental health services than it is for a man when they get an autism diagnosis.
So, in short, my kind of thought on this is that mental health professionals, whether that's CAMHS or whether that's adult mental health services, should be better at recognising autism. So I should not have spent 10 years heavily involved to the point of hospitalisation at times in the mental health system without a single person querying whether I might be on the spectrum.
Yeah, and I think this happens, it's not just in women, it's in men as well, that like it happens that people get referred to mental health services because they just aren't as aware of autism as they should be.
So yeah, I think that is an area that could really do with addressing, to be honest. So you've made a note here, and I'm not sure what it means. So you can go with that.
I think that kind of links in with what we've just written. Women are more likely to be.
Oh yes, no, I know what it means. So basically, what I was saying is my experience, certainly with my daughter, is that women and girls are less likely to present with challenging, not saying they wouldn't, but less likely to present with challenging and unexpected behaviours, and more likely to present with anxiety. So we're talking about the quiet, shy child who's not causing you any trouble at all.
Yeah, I was definitely the quiet. But also, I didn't want to go to school in year 3. I spent a lot of time ill at home, and my mum just didn't know what to do. And that was partially because my teacher had decided, because I was the quiet, shy child, I was the best person to sit next to the most disruptive child because I wouldn't respond to him, which was fine because, yeah, I wouldn't respond to him and I didn't.
But you were carrying that stress, presumably.
But I was sat next to someone who sometimes threw chairs and who shouted, and I was like, I'm just trying to get on with my day, and I am being overloaded, but I couldn't communicate that, so I just got stomach aches.
And it's actually a real bugbear of mine that I have. I was going to use the phrase "bee in my bonnet," but I don't actually know what that means. About is that, particularly with children, what I see in the school system is that the children that are presenting with challenging behaviour are getting supported because they have to be supported because it is disrupting the school day. And I'm not saying they shouldn't; they should absolutely be supported. But then the children that present in a more anxious, quiet, kind of passive way are not getting the support they should be getting because they are not disrupting the school day. So my experience of that is that where that can lead is basically to kind of self-harm and depression and further anxiety. So they should absolutely be getting that support, and it should absolutely be as much as a priority as it is for the disruptive children.
I got that support from the school librarian / secretary because she's the person I'd go to if I wanted to go home, and she invited me into the library at break times. And I just think, if I hadn't have had, my mum was like, if you hadn't have had that support, I don't know how long we would have been able to keep you in school because you just really didn't want to be there. And it was like she helped me enjoy school, and she became Mrs. Hill. She was my best friend.
That's sweet.
It's actually written on Mrs. Hill, and then she introduced me to Jenny, who's also another shy girl, who'd moved to the school. So most of my school came from another school, an infant school, and so she was new, and so she's like, you can be friends with her. That's the friendship I'll set up for you.
So yeah, and so I think when we're looking at, to get back to the topic we were on, when we're looking at diagnosing girls, the greatest problem is that we have these anxious, shy, passive children who are just about getting through primary school, hit in secondary school, and being diagnosed with eating disorders and anxiety disorders and depression, and being medicated and being not sort of treated appropriately, and not ending up on the autism diagnosis pathway, because this does not look like what we are expecting autism to look like, so we couldn't possibly consider that it might be. And neither will parents and caregivers, because this presentation of autism isn't widely known. So as alongside educating diagnosticians and educating mental health professionals, if this presentation became more commonly known through, I don't know, media or whatever, then parents are going to recognise it sooner in their own children.
And teachers as well.
Because I can tell you that if I hadn't already had a son diagnosed with autism, there is absolutely no way I would have thought that there was anything going on with Wonder Girl. I would have just thought she was an anxious child. And then she would have got much further and probably not been supported for much longer. So I feel like I'm on a soapbox, but I feel really passionately about all of these things.
Yeah.
So
I definitely think it's something to be passionate about, because it changes things when you have the right support. And it's like, so often women especially go to mental health services, and when I went to counselling, I had an awful experience because I felt like the person who was supposed to be counselling me was telling me that my experience was wrong. And I was like, I know, like, I'm quite self-confident, I know my experience isn't wrong, I know the way I'm talking about it isn't wrong. And like, she was trying to tell me that it was my mother's fault, that I felt emotional, and I was like, no, I don't feel emotional about that, I feel this. And she just didn't listen to me, and I was like, I just eventually had to leave the counselling, because I was like, this isn't helping. But, you know, often women with autism have less self-confidence because they've not been supported at that earlier age, and then they keep going back and keep trying to be this person that they're not, and that's what causes more mental health issues.
And I think absolutely what you're saying about them trying to blame your mother is also a really common experience. I had the experience of being told by a teacher, oh, she puts it on for you, she's absolutely fine, and then you come to pick her up and she puts it on for you. So basically the implication being that I have made her clingy, or that she thinks that that's what I want from her, which, you know, isn't nice to hear as a parent, and absolutely doesn't take into account that anybody is going to let down their guard when their safe person appears.
Yeah.
So I think that blaming over-parenting or blaming helicopter parenting of girls by mothers is quite a common situation. So then you end up with parents who are basically having to fight for their children whilst being accused of being neurotic and not parenting well, and that is just utterly unacceptable.
Yeah.
Have I used that phrase enough times in this video? But this is my experience that I have lived. It took me 18 months to get a diagnosis for my daughter, and during that time I had lots of people telling me she's totally fine, I don't see it, there's definitely no autism there.
Yeah.
And so
my favourite is when you tell someone you're autistic and they're like, oh, I just wouldn't have known at all. And I'm like, what are you trying to say, that I don't seem autistic? Like, do you know enough about autism to tell me I don't seem autistic?
Do I look autistic enough for you? That's the thing that's on Twitter.
It's not like it's stamped on my forehead.
It's not like we all have like a barcode or a you know, whatever. So I guess what we're saying here in the overall thing is that you shouldn't make assumptions about how the autistic traits are going to present on an individual, be that a boy or a girl.
Yeah.
Because a trait, the way that an experience is communicated by a person can be really variable.
Yeah, and I think the best resources to look at when you're thinking about whether you need a diagnosis is resources from people on the spectrum, because so often researchers and so-called experts in the field, they talk about this trait and they talk about it in one way, and it's like they're coming at it from an angle of, I'm a researcher, I know about this, whereas actually you don't know the lived experience, and the lived experience is tangible, it's different in different situations. It's like autism is a social communication difficulty, but that doesn't mean you can't be social, and often they forget to put in the caveat of like, oh, actually, you know, yes, it's this, but it's also, you know, a moldable, changeable thing. It doesn't have a clear set of rules.
Yeah.
However much we really want it to.
However convenient that would make it.
Yeah.
So I would like to add, before we finish up here, that the National Autistic Society are releasing a module for diagnosticians, for people on the spectrum, for parents, for anyone that works with girls on the spectrum, that is about women and girls. I have seen the module, I am in the module, and I think it's really great. It's going to be available, my understanding is that it's going to be available for free for a year, so you can just, I assume, go on the website and download it from March. I'll let you know when that's out, and I'll put links up and stuff for you, and hopefully this is going to be a starting point in making a really big difference in this area. So I think we should probably finish up now, because you guys have probably got, I don't know, stuff to do, right? So thanks for watching. As always, if you have, what are we talking about next month? I can't remember.
I don't know.
I'll let you know. If you have any comments or anything to ask Roz or I, leave a comment in the comment box below. Please like and share this video so that we can contribute more to getting this information out there. And if you haven't already, do subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye.